Welcome to New Rechts, or for our English listeners, New Right. My name is Daniel de Liever, and today we're going to talk about the political situation in Poland. And it's something we don't hear a lot about in the news anymore in the Netherlands, but I'm glad to talk to someone who actually lives in Poland, is Polish, and speaks out about a lot of things that are going wrong in Poland. So thank you, Jerzy Kwasniewski. I hope I pronounced that properly. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure, of course.
And I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with you, but you're a Polish lawyer, and you're also the president of the board and co-founder of Ordo Juris Institute. It's something we're going to talk about, of course, about a little bit today. But before we do, maybe you can give a short introduction for those that don't know you.
Yes, the Ordo Juris Institute I'm presiding, and we have founded 13 years ago, is dealing mostly with fundamental rights and unalienable rights and protection of basic freedoms. So we are dealing with protection of life, family, freedom, sovereignty, and it deals with everything that is now under siege of the liberal forces in Europe. So we are dealing with freedom of speech. We are fighting against hate speech laws, both in Poland and internationally. We are fighting against limitations on freedom of religion in different countries and in Poland as well. We're also providing assistance to families who are confronted by child protection services, not only in Poland, but even mostly in Norway, Germany, Sweden, sometimes UK, Belgium as well. So we are dealing with everything that is considered conservative now and was just normal living and average for average person years before. And we are mostly lawyers. Ordo Juris it is now 70 lawyers working on different issues, but also we are having separate departments concerning family policies, different policies of the state. We are a back office of the conservative movement, political conservative movement in Poland, and we are totally independent. It is important. We are not connected with any single party in Poland. We are not financed from public sources. We are only financed by private donors, mostly Polish private donors. And it makes us also an independent opposition to the current government of Donald Tusk. So the liberal government that took over Poland 1.5 years ago. And also Ordo Juris is present on the international level. Since 2015 or 14, we are of course present in Brussels with our branch. We have also a consultative status in UN in New York, acting in New York, acting in Geneva and Nairobi, and we also have small branches of Ordo Juris founded in Croatia, in Spain, in Ukraine. So trying to reach out to different societies and to support conservative values. And the just common sense values, I would say, rather. And as a lawyer, I'm mostly in Ordo Juris, and it is 80% of my activity now.
I think thank you for that introduction. You mentioned common sense. I kind of have to ask, because common sense is something that is, you could say, under pressure from a lot of different areas. But if you would have to describe this, because when people nowadays say common sense, people mean a lot of different things. So if you would explain to your average person that doesn't maybe take a lot of information in every day from media or from politics, what do you mean common sense?
For a lawyer, common sense, it is maybe a slightly difficult definition, but for a lawyer, common sense is the first generation of human rights. It is the first generation of human rights that was codified in 40, 70, 80 years ago. And it is the basic unalienable set of rights. Property, freedom of speech, basic political freedoms, freedom of religion, freedom to found a family and have children and raise your children in your family without interference of the state. And just this basic, typical freedom against the state
Mhm.
freedom against any undue interference of the administration. And of course, it is also freedom to pursue happiness on your own and pursue happiness in a traditional way. And most often, it means to pursue happiness in your religion, in your national identity, in your cultural identity as well, without being blamed for that. And without being attacked for that, you follow what your forefathers believed. This is the basis for common sense, and it was considered basic and unalienable rights when Universal Declaration of Human Rights was signed 80 years ago. And now, as we are all aware, all those basic rights are undermined. So, in fact, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is being undermined by the so-called new generations of human rights. Just one example: freedom of speech, that was a general freedom, now is confronted with the so-called hate speech laws and limitations that are considered more important freedoms under new generations of human rights.
And I think it's a good point, and we're specifically going to talk about how that happens in Poland. But before we do, you really laid out how your organization, or Loris, how it actually operates in many different parts of the world. But was this actually funded, this organization? What need does it try to fill in so many things that are going on right now?
We have to understand that Poland, after 50 years, half a century of communism, was a deserted land without any NGO activity, without any organic growth of of civic society. The communism has literally killed, all those who were creating civil society or were cornerstones of civic society before 1989. And the Catholic Church was the only remaining organization outside of the Communist Party. And it took 30 years in Poland to reconstruct, at least partially, civic society. And in 2012, we, as lawyers, human rights lawyers, we were observing this development of civic society in Poland, and it became clear that this civic society is dominated by international interference and by foreign sources like Open Society Foundation, George Soros, and sometimes even party foundations from Germany, for instance, or USAID funds. So the civic society of Poland was a fake civic society. It was a tool in the hands of foreign powers, and then we supported establishment of different civic society organizations, organic civic society organizations, and among them legal entity, a legal think tank, Ordo Juris, that would be a back office to them all. And now we are all active in single confederation of NGOs, of Polish NGOs. It is now more than 150 organizations, organically grown, bottom up growing organizations that are, to some extent at least, an opposition to those designed civic society organizations planted in Poland by George Soros and friends. And the idea behind Ordo Juris was to provide this common sense, organic organizations with arguments and with back office services of lawyers whenever they are confronted in courts, but also to provide them with arguments that would be more effective in public debate, because the legal arguments and the legal analysis is a part of public debate as well.
It's a good point. And maybe for those that are not as familiar with, if you say you have this artificial civil society compared to the more organic traditional one, can you give examples for those people at home that are less familiar with it, of both sides, to show people what the actual differences are in practice for people?
Just imagine that in the late 80s, under the communist government, when General Jaruzelski, who introduced martial state in Poland and imprisoned all our freedom fighters and liberation fighters then, he met with some important foreign actors, as George Soros and others, and allowed them to plant in Poland first institutions of civic society. The first organizations of civic society were created in Poland in the late 80s under the communism, and they were part of a calculated, designed transformation from communism to democracy, liberal democracy. Under these transformations, though, those organizations funded by partially Americans, partially by international millionaires, were providing umbrella protection to communists and communist secret services who were taking over the new liberal state and were playing a major political role in the new country. So just imagine the situation after Nazi Germany, when most of political functions in the country, most judges, most important leaders are in fact previous high officials of the Nazi party. The situation was very similar in Poland. Judiciary, government, even the president, Aleksander Kwaśniewski, who was the president for 10 years, all of them were previously highest officials of the Communist Party. And it was the beginning of 90s, and it was done under the umbrella protection of artificial civic society that was expressing its support for this model of transformation against the will of the people, who had no media and who had no possibility to articulate their opposition in 90s. And it is the early 21st century when the general population, the people, arrived with some new tools of expression, mostly conservative media, and also the new organizations like Ordo Iuris and multiple other organizations that were giving them a chance to step out, to articulate their opposition, and also with time to form a strong political movements that finally in 2015 took over power in politics.
Good point. Thank you for explaining that. And now there are mostly Dutch people who are going to listen to this, of course, because we are a Dutch platform. Why do you think that this would be relevant to understand also, now that we're going to talk about what's going on now under the current Donald Tusk government, why should people care in, for example, the Netherlands or other European and Western countries?
What we are experiencing now in Poland is a dress rehearsal before similar actions taken by liberals in other countries. What is being done now in Poland, I mean the implementation of so-called militant democracy, as it is called by Donald Tusk, Prime Minister of Poland, or transitional justice tools, as it is called by the Minister of Justice, Adam Bodnar, is just a preparation before similar tools will be implemented in different countries like Hungary, for instance, if the liberals win next year election. What is militant democracy is it is a constitutional law theory that makes legal violations of the constitution of the country if the aim of those violations is to reinstitute rule of law. And this doctrine of militant democracy is openly invoked by Prime Minister Tusk whenever he violates constitution, whenever he openly violates law of the state, in order to take over another institutions of government, another branches of government. In the situation we are now, not only public television was taken by force with use of police officers taking over public television against the law in the late 2023, with the broadcasting signal being stopped for some hours, but it is also taking over of the National Prosecutor Office without consent of the president that is required by the law. It is also the situation where the government announced that none of the decisions of the Constitutional Tribunal, the constitutional institution responsible for constitutional review in Poland, would be accepted by the government, because they do not see it fit to accept constitutional review by the Constitutional Tribunal dominated by conservatives. Very similar stance was taken by Donald Tusk against the Supreme Court, Some of the chambers of the Supreme Court are dominated by judges believed to be conservative. They do not expressively say what are their political worldviews, but the government already announced that some of the chambers are illegal and will not, and their decisions will not be tolerated by the government. It is a situation that I wouldn't believe may happen in Poland. But we experience it now. We experience a very similar situation in Romania, for instance, with presidential elections being cancelled partially a few weeks ago. And it is the beginning of a tide of illiberal attack on constitutional systems of Europe. The aim of this attack is clear. The aim of this attack is to limit possibility of the conservative forces to take the power by democratic proceedings. In Poland, the next steps would be, of course, to limit the possibility of the conservative political parties to start in elections that will be held in 2 years.
It is crazy when you describe all of this, like, for example, breaking constitutions, taking media and other things by force. That doesn't seem like a very moderate view. But if you ask people, for example, in the Netherlands, but I assume it's also the same in other Western European countries like France or Germany, what do you think about Donald Tusk? They will say that he's a moderate right-wing, moderate conservative politician. Why do you think that there is such a big disparity between what's happening on the ground in Poland, where several rights of people are violated, even constitutional rights, and the perception that people have of this government of Donald Tusk?
Donald Tusk, initially 25 years ago, was a politician of the conservative liberal circles. 20 years ago or 15 years ago, his party's civic platform started this drift towards socialist positions. And especially after the rise of the bottom-up conservative movement in 2013, 2015, and finally taking over the government by the conservatives in 2015, civic platform and Donald Tusk decided to form an opposition to conservative forces and to collect all the opposition under one banner of civic platform. And just that time, civic platform and Donald Tusk himself became radically socialist politicians. It is just tactics and strategy in internal politics, but of course it made them allies to different political forces in European Union as well. And it is why Donald Tusk arrived a few years afterwards as the president of the council, and it is why civic platform is supported by Ursula von der Leyen and other European politicians when it implements those radical militant democracy tools in Poland, violating the rights of the opposition, imprisoning members of the parliament. It also happened for a few times last year, or imprisoning Catholic priests. And it is all called reinstitution of rule of law. So, in fact, Donald Tusk became a part of the European coterie of liberal Democrats, of the bureaucracy of Brussels, that is actively fighting against sovereignty of states, and is actively fighting against the growth of conservative movement that we are experiencing all over Europe now.
And what would you say? I think the basic argument, if I would lay it out, of this government is that the previous government of PiS, which are considered a more conservative party in Poland, for those that don't know it, especially outside of Poland, they're seen as is extreme right-wing party, just like the Fidesz party Viktor Orban is considered right now in Hungary. And the view that's given quite often in the news over here, at least, is, you had this corrupt right-wing government in the past. now we are finally done with that. And what's happening now, if it's ever talked about, is to clean up the mess that was given by the previous conservative government. Well, what do you say to people that believe in this narrative that's given by mainstream media?
We are, as Ordo Juris and I myself, we are totally independent from the conservatives in Poland, and and we very often criticize the conservative movement in Poland, and we were very often critics of the conservative government between 2015 and 2023. Nevertheless, their attempt to reform the judiciary was part of their election campaign. It was made public. It was based on analysis provided by associations of judges and lawyers. And it was a very brave attempt to implement a reform that was not implemented after the fall of the communism. I start with that because it is the major attack of the European Union officials on Poland, that Poland has infringed the independence of judiciary. In fact, Poland just implemented some more democratic measures when it comes to election of judges, in line with what is happening in Spain or other countries. It is still a very independent body. Judiciary is self-appointing and self-evaluating without any interference of the government. But these slight regulations that provided the parliament with possibility to nominate some judges to the National Judges Council that takes part in evaluation of judges was considered to be a violation of the European principles. That's absolutely absurd. And the only reason for that was to wreak havoc in Poland and to support the opposition, the liberal opposition. And of course, the conservative government was just acting in line with the mainstream European conservative approach on many issues. It was pro-European. It was supporting European Union for 7 or 5 years, up to the moment when European Union openly attacked Poland and stopped any funding, maybe not any, but most of the financial support for Poland and for the funds. And of course, the Polish Christian Democrats, the Law and Justice, have not differed from Fidesz of Viktor Orban and were very similar to CDU, CSU in Germany. And they were even part of the same political circles in Europe. The only reason to oppose them was, of course, their attempt to reform the country and the opposition of Donald Tusk and the liberals in the country, and of course also opposition of Law and Justice against European reform project that was more and more popular in European circles since 2020 and 2019. Law and Justice expressed its opposition against the creation of the so-called European superstate, and was also more and more critical when it comes to Green Deal and other European policies with the Migration Pact as well. And it made it, of course, easier for the European Union to start those campaigns against Law and Justice. That's the basic reasons.
Okay, so I think for people that will be surprising to hear, it sounds like a more moderate right-wing party that just try to also do some popular reforms, but we still see in the news, you hear people of Tusk government talk about denazification. You hear people talk about Nuremberg trials, Yugoslavia tribunals. There's all comparisons that are made. Why do you think there is this very extreme rhetoric around Law and Justice Party as if they literally were Nazis that needed to be dealt with accordingly?
It's not only that they were not Nazis, they were not nationalists even. They were just Christian Democrats. And of course, it is the reason for that is to polarize society and to utilize international connections of liberal government in order to annihilate conservative parties from the political landscape of Poland. the aim for this that was already expressed by Donald Tusk. It is to form a new political landscape in Poland, where a civic platform takes back the center of the political scene. The left that is allied with Donald Tusk will be the socialists on the political landscape, and the Peasants' Party will take the right of the political part of the political landscape, and all of them being political allies of Donald Tusk. In order to do so, you have to name your political opposition as unelectable, undemocratic, and illiberal, in order to not only annihilate their political influence, but also to delegalize, at least partially, their political movement. And I'm absolutely sure that after presidential elections that will be held in 1 month in May, if Rafał Trzaskowski, candidate of the Liberals, will be elected president of Poland, this strategy will be implemented to its fully will be implemented in order to limit the conservative political movement. So they just need to polarize in order to annihilate.
That is worrying, and I guess another big part of this is the media. You already briefly talked about what has happened to public media, to conservative media, even though you also said that historically this was actually important to bring back civil society. So maybe you can also explain a little bit what has happened lately with the attack, you could say, from the Tusk government on the media.
It all started with public media. The Polish media landscape is quite similar to that of other Central European countries and to that of most European countries as well. Public media have very strong position on the market, and public media are at least partially controlled by the government. There was a reform of this under the conservative government, with additional institution created to control public media, with an aim to provide at least partially independence to public media from the government. Those institutions were trumped over by the Donald Tusk administration. So without any legal grounds, they have taken over public media in the first weeks of the new government, just 2 weeks after it was sworn in. But the general landscape in Poland is much better than it was 20 years ago. Even without public media, there are at least 1 or 2 TV stations that are conservative, with popular access. There are newspapers, weekly magazines, and of course new media that are conservative, that are siding with either Law and Justice or Confederation, so the second conservative political power in Poland. So the situation is much better than it was 20 years ago, even though the liberals are doing their best to limit conservative media reach now. For instance, just a week ago or 2 weeks ago, the broadcasting license of the major conservative TV Republika was announced to be invalid. The case is now in the administrative court, but the government does its best to destroy the most important conservative TV broadcasting studio. So the landscape is better than it was 20 years ago under the domination of the liberals, but of course the Donald Tusk government does its best to bring it back to the situation from 20 years ago.
And if luckily then the media landscape is more diverse in the actual sense of the word, that there's so conservative views out there, what would you say when it comes to the legal battle? We already talked a little bit about what's going on there, but do you see Poland, I guess, stabilizing, or do you see that there's actually a constitutional crisis happening that is unable to be resolved as long as Tusk is in power? How optimistic are you from this legal point of view on what's happening right now?
Just imagine that in December last year, the president of the Constitutional Court initiated or just asked the national prosecutor to initiate a proceeding against Donald Tusk for coup d'état. So it is the situation we are experiencing now in Poland, with the Constitutional Court blaming the government of illegally taking over constitutional institutions. So it is not stabilizing. It's growingly unstable, and we are approaching the major threshold of constitutional crisis. It is presidential elections. In mid-May, we have first round of presidential elections, the second round on the last day of May. And probably in the second round, the conservative candidate will challenge the Rafał Trzaskowski, the liberal candidate for the presidential elections. And already now, some of the liberal politicians raise questions as to the validity of the election process. And of course, after what happened in Romania and France, they may be encouraged to use their influence over judiciary in order to delegalize or destabilize the situation during presidential elections, in order to declare the final outcome, if the conservative win, to be invalid. And then the Speaker of the House, of course, one of the allies of Donald Tusk, will take over under the constitution the presidential seat. So it is all. It all may happen in the following 2 months, and as lawyers, we have to say that many things are unpredictable now, especially with the government openly violating constitution. So no, the situation is not stabilizing. It's more and more unstable and more unpredictable and more dangerous for people, because people got imprisoned for political reasons as well.
Seems like, in a sense, dark times. What can people actually do? People in Poland, but maybe also even people outside of Poland, to help with this crisis going on in Poland at the moment?
What is important now is to spread information on what is happening in Poland. The liberal government draws its strength mostly from international support. They are able to to exert pressure over the opposition, to imprison members of the parliament, to expel members of the parliament from Poland, like Marcin Romanowski, who escaped to Hungary and asked for political asylum. And they are able to utilize all the power of the state against the political opposition, just because they are supported by European Union structures, by the Commission, and by their political allies in the liberal circles of Western Europe. After fall of the Biden administration and after the rise of the Trump administration, the situation has already partially changed for the better, of course, when it comes to the situation in Poland. And if the information is spreading on what is happening in Poland and what is done by the government in Poland, this support for them from outside may not be as strong, and of course they will be much more open for negotiations with the opposition in Poland. And what we now want is to reinstitute full political freedom to the opposition, to the conservative opposition, full access to public media, full ability to run in elections, to confirm guarantees when it comes to presidential elections in May as well. I have to say, I can't believe I can't believe that it is happening in Poland now. That's something that I may speak of some other country 15 years ago, but I have never thought that I would be covering situation in Poland with similar opinions.
Are you ever afraid for your own security or of people of your organization when this is all going on? When you're saying that people are imprisoned, when potential coup d'etat is happening, how do you personally deal with that when, like you said, you could not imagine you would even be in this position as a country?
In 80s, my father, as one of the co-founders of Regional Solidarity movement, was imprisoned for a few times, and he used to be prepared for that with a traveling bag under his bed. So I do just the same. And of course, many of my friends from different NGOs were arrested, kept for a few days. Few of them are imprisoned now. Their homes were searched by police officers at 6 a.m. Just in order to threaten and intimidate without any due reason in the criminal proceeding. So yes, we are all partially afraid of that happening. The situation of Ordo Iuris is stronger than other organizations because of our independence. Many of the organizations, as it is common in Europe, were supported at least partially by the state. So many of the conservative governments have been founded at least partially by the conservative government before. Not only their financial basis has been cancelled by the new government, even if those contracts were long years, long contracts covering some long projects. But now they are ordered to pay back all those sums that were accepted by them in the previous years. So it is another tool of destroying this conservative NGO structure in Poland. Ordo Iuris is a different situation. Many attempts were done by the new administration to find any public sources of financing of Ordo Iuris. They were, of course, unsuccessful. So we are now still active. However, one of the promises given by the liberal politicians 1.5 years ago when they were running in parliamentary elections was to delegalize Ordo Iuris. They may not do that under the Polish law and under the Polish constitution. The freedom of assembly, the freedom of organization, the freedom of speech are protected. But of course, in the militant democracy, everything is possible. And if they are if they will also take the presidential power, so the last part of the government that is still under the control of the conservatives now, after and if they will take it after the presidential elections, anything may happen, and of course, Ordo Iuris will also be endangered.
I'm sorry to hear that. I think that is something that's hard to imagine for a lot of people over here in the Netherlands. Do you think it is likely that the conservatives will lose the battle of the presidential election? And if so, what can we expect the coming period? You already described it a little bit, but what should people look at when it comes to Poland?
For now, Rafał Trzaskowski, the liberal candidate, has 30-35% in the polls. The second candidate, Mr. Nawrocki from Law and Justice, is very close to him. And the third candidate of Konfederacja, so the second conservative power, Mr. Mencen, is around 18% of support. So the conservatives joined together have pretty much support in the elections. So hopefully in the second round, whoever will run against Trzaskowski, be it Nawrocki or Mencen, so Law and Justice or Confederation, he will have good chances of winning. And that's why the liberals are already preparing scenarios to undermine validity or to question validity of elections, just in a way that it has been done in Romania. That's what we are expecting for the next weeks, and probably this scenario will be implemented if the conservative candidate does not win with a huge margin of votes. But if we are successful to win with our candidate with 10-15%, then of course those scenarios may not be implemented.
I mean, when you talk about the Romanian situation, there, of course, the whole election was nullified, and the primary candidate actually was not allowed to participate anymore. Yeah. So when you're saying that this is already a realistic scenario, I think it's tragic that if this would happen to another European country, especially when we have a lot of left-wing politicians who pride themselves at least in words, with the rule of law, with democracy, while nullifying at the same time democracies around Europe.
Yes, and we have to remember that when it comes to Romania, the main accusation was the influence of foreign services on the social media. And in fact, what has been proven, it was that this influence has been paid by the political opposition in Romania, by political opposition to the candidate. So in fact, it was not foreign influence. And of course, this very similar scenario is being now implemented in France. Preemptive attempt to influence presidential elections. And we are aware that similar scenarios are being prepared for Poland, and similar scenarios are being prepared for Hungary for the next year. Next year we will have parliamentary elections in Hungary, and of course Fidesz is very strong and very, very strong in popular support, but the coalition of liberal parties are having are also having very strong support from sources.
Yes, it's dark times. Even in Germany, we see them trying to ban Alternative für Deutschland. So the second party now in Germany. So I think it is, in a sense, that these are troubling times. What can people do if they want to support you and your organization?
Please visit our website. It's ordojuris.pl. We also have an English version of our webpage. If you find it useful, if you would like to support us financially as well, we'll be glad for that, of course. We are mostly supported by private donors. We're only supported by private donors, and without this support, we will not be able to act and oppose the liberal rise and the liberal attacks on constitution in Poland and unalienable rights. And of course, promote the information on what is happening in Poland. As I told you, it is the single most important action you may take to undermine the sources of international support for Donald Tusk by just informing on what is truly happening in Poland.
Thank you. I hope that you will gather enough support, and that the constitutional crisis that's happening right now in Poland, that it will weaken. Let's hope that the power of what's happening now under Donald Tusk will also weaken, and that the rule of law can actually be restored. So thank you very much for sharing this story today with us. I'm happy that you took the time.
Thank you.
And of course, also for those that want to make these kind of conversations possible at Nieuw Rechts, you can also, of course, become a subscriber at nieuwrechts.nl. Thank you very much, and see you in the next one.